Hey, what's happening, everybody? I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about weeds and wool. Now, if that's not a weird intro, I don't know what is, but that's what I'm going to talk to you about for a few minutes. And before I dive in, I want to give full credit to my own spiritual leadership who really inspired this message that I'm going to share with you kind of from my own personal baggage, if you will. So thank you, First Christian Church here in Decatur, for everything that you've been doing and for stomping on my toes the last few weeks. Really, it has been an awesome experience getting to walk through the spiritual life. And in particular, if you haven't followed their messages, this recent Overflow series was truly amazing. So what I want to talk to you today about, I said weeds and wool, so let's break that down a little bit. What I want to bring up, I guess, are two parables that were shared with me in the last couple of weeks, and just how big of an impact they made. So let's talk about the first one, weeds. We recently had a message that brought up the parable of the sower, and a lot of us have heard this message before, talking about scattering seed and it landing in different places. And what really moved me was the way that it was taught. In particular, the weeds that the seed that landed in the weeds and the thorns and everything else grew up around them and choked it out. And the reason that it made such a big impact for me this time around is that, he was speaking to me, and he did an excellent job of explaining that oftentimes when we hear the parable of the sower, we think that essentially Christians are the good seed, the seed that lands on the good soil, and that everything else, the other three examples, are essentially non-Christians. But that's not the case. Hearing the idea that we as Christians who are living intentional lives, who know Christ well, who try to walk it out, who are involved in our faith communities and so forth, that we can go through periods of time when we let the weeds grow up around us and the thorns choke out just ourselves and our spiritual life. We can land in this place where we become that plant, if you will, that is being choked out by the things of this world. And the pastor that day used the example, the word, if you will, being stuck. And the second he used the word stuck, I knew he was talking about me. You may have noticed that I have released significantly less videos this fall than I was probably all of this summer. Which, COVID and work schedules and things played into that, but boy, that word stuck hit home, because I've been stuck. I've been stuck in this place where my typical ambition, my typical devotion to study and reading and prayer and all of that has been choked out. It's been choked out by stress. It's been choked out by busyness of work and overtime. It's been choked out by the busyness and exhaustion that comes with raising 3 children in the middle of this chaos. It's been choked out emotionally and everything else. I often used to think that the thorns and the weeds were sin. They were these bad things that you could be doing as somebody who supposedly believed, and that sin would choke out your relationship with Jesus. I didn't think about it necessarily in the terms of my spiritual life being choked out by just stress and worry and busyness. And I realized he was talking about me. And there's a lot of you Christians out there. There's a lot of you, I would argue, pastors and volunteers and Sunday school teachers and small group leaders and worship team members. There's a lot of you out there who are feeling like I've been feeling. You're not living the same you used to live. It's not some depraved, bad life as much as it's a quiet one. It's one of almost starvation. And it took hearing that message to realize just how little sunlight and nutrients and water I've been getting, because I've been letting everything else grow up around me and steal all that nutrients while I just laid back and did the bare bones basics, which weren't necessarily good. Just finding myself practicing more of a survival self-care, sitting on the couch, flipping through my phone and watching movies or TV, and not necessarily feeding myself. If you're in the weeds today, try and recognize that doesn't mean you're lost. It doesn't mean you're depraved or sinful. It might just mean that you're worn out and that your life is surrounded by worry and stress and things that you may have no control over. But what we can control, as intentionally as possible, with a lot of grace for ourselves, is to remember to eat and drink and soak in the sun. Because without it, you wind up tired and exhausted and confused about why you're not growing and blooming the way that you used to. In addition to that, let's talk about wool. This last weekend, in particular during worship, we were singing and the idea of God leaving the 99 to rescue the one, again, does not necessarily mean, if you're that one, it doesn't necessarily mean that you sinned or walked away from God. Sometimes it simply means that you've gotten lost, you veered off, you laid down out of a need for rest or exhaustion or something along those lines, and everybody around you moved on with the herd, with the flock, and you were left behind. And the good news today is, if you find yourself in the weeds, if you find yourself as that missing sheep, God has not forgotten about you. And he is willing to shamelessly, recklessly, and lovingly leave the flock who is healthy to come and find and pick up and heal and carry you back on his shoulders. You aren't without hope. I'm speaking to you as that person who has been in the weeds lately and has felt exhausted and tired and not myself. But God hasn't forgotten about me, and he's not forgetting about you. So call out to him. If you don't have the strength to stand, call out to him, and call out to the ones he's put in your life. Give yourself grace, give yourself love, and do what you can to do some pruning and chop those weeds and thorns and everything out of your life. Take away all the easy, empty calorie, self-care type stuff, and get back to the richness and fullness of a life with God, with real sunlight, with real nutrients and water, so that you, as your spiritual plant, can gain strength and grow and produce fruit for the kingdom once again. I pray that you would know God and that you would let him care for you and love on you, and that you would find the strength and motivation that you once had, so that once again you can be a powerful force in this world for a God who died for it. Have a good day.